So one of the factors that determines the market structure is barriers to entry. So let's have a look at these. So if we were setting up a pharmaceutical business or an airline or a fizzy drink business, there would be certain things that get in the way or make it very hard for us to enter the industry and compete in a real sense with the bigger companies like British Airways, Virgin Atlantic, AstraZeneca and the Coca-Cola company. As we can see there, they make so many different products. So barriers to entry are any obstacles to new firms entering a market and competing with those incumbent firms, the firms being the incumbent being the firms that are already in the market. So here are a few examples of barriers to entry. So patent or patent, however you say it, or copyright. So this is a legal restriction and this stops sale of the same product. And the reason that the government put this on, this is a regulation, the reason why governments do this is because they want firms to be able to invest money and protect their ideas, and they won't invest unless they feel that there's an adequate reward for their ideas, and if they can just be stolen, then there won't be the same level of reward. Nationalise industries that have been granted a charter which prohibit competition, again a legal restriction. Usually this is done with natural monopolies, so if we think about businesses such as Royal Mail, that would have a royal charter, so there aren't competitor firms that also deliver letters. There are for parcels, but not letters. And another barrier to entry could be an incumbent exploiting economies of scale. So this is a cost-based barrier. And we can split this into two examples, really. Limit pricing, which is setting a low price so that other firms, new firms, don't even enter the market because they know they'd have to be a certain size to be able to achieve the same low costs. Or predatory pricing, which is setting a very low price to try and push current firms out of the market. And you might be able to do that if you've got significant economies of scale and maybe other firms don't. Another barrier to entry could be high setup costs. So actually getting together the money to be able to enter the market. I certainly don't have the money to be able to set up my own airline. And sunk costs as well can act as a barrier, because sunk costs are costs that cannot be recovered. So if you'd entered the market and then you knew that if you left the market you'd lose out on a certain amount of money. So usually things like branding, if you're unsuccessful as a firm and you've put a lot of money into that branding, it's unlikely that you're going to be able to sell the business. Maybe if you've gone made awful PR mistakes and those types of things, no one's going to want to buy that brand. So that could be a barrier to exit, and therefore it acts as a barrier to entry, because you think, well, if I get into that market, I'm not going to be able to recover that money. So that would be a problem. Differentiation, brand loyalty. So some customers are just really loyal to certain brands. I tend to always drink Coca-Cola, but not that I have a strong affiliation with it. It's just more out of habit. And I suppose the intangible benefits that certain brands bring. And this can make customers very loyal to a certain company or firm. And you also get customer inertia. So it's this, can't be bothered to shift suppliers. So you often get this in utility markets with the gas and electricity. People tend to, I think they're getting better at it now with, Money Supermarket and Go Compare and those types of things, allowing you to compare prices of utilities easily. But it is still a bit of a hassle, and you certainly get it with bank accounts. Usually people stick with the same bank that they've been with since they've been young, really, or wherever they got their first bank account. That's who they usually stick with. Control over suppliers as well can be a barrier to entry. So you're unable to access those raw materials, and this is an example of vertical integration. If you're vertically vertically integrated with your supplier, you might not be inclined to sell those supplies to one of your competitors. So these are some example barriers to entry, and it's important when you're applying a certain market structure to a case study, because you can talk about the things that have restricted entry, and this will really determine what type of market structure it is. So if there are very high barriers to entry, it's going to be more like a monopoly market structure. The market's going to be very concentrated. If there are very few barriers to entry, then it's going to be more towards perfect competition, and it's going to be a less concentrated market.